In the far reaches of the galaxy, peace had reigned for over 3,000 years. The Galactic Alliance was a union of many different alien species. They shared a long history of cooperation and understanding. Different races, each with their unique cultures, technology, and ways of life, had learned to live side by side in harmony. The wars of old were nothing but stories passed down through generations. The galaxy had learned that peace was possible, and for a long time, it had been. Among these peaceful civilizations, humanity was a new player. Earth had only recently joined the galactic community. At first, many of the other species looked at humans with suspicion. They were young, aggressive by nature, and still figuring out how to survive in a much larger universe. But as humans made their way into the stars, they surprised everyone. Their resourcefulness, creativity, and determination soon earned them the respect of other species. Now, in the quiet corners of the galaxy, life was simple. There were no major wars, no major conflicts. Many thought that the galaxy had found its true path forward, and all they needed to do was maintain the peace. But not everyone agreed. The Zorthar Empire, a powerful and ancient race, had long been a force to reckon with. For centuries, they had been a major player in the galaxy, known for their immense strength, unmatched technology, and cold, calculating nature. They believed in control and order and in their superiority over all other species. For the Zorthar, peace was just a temporary break-in between periods of conquest. Despite their ancient power, the Zorthar had kept their distance from the Galactic Alliance. They tolerated the peace but never fully embraced it. They always watched from afar, waiting for the moment when they would rise again, when they could remind everyone who truly ruled the stars. And now, the time had come. The Zorthar Empire, led by the ruthless Emperor Valthor, suddenly made a shocking announcement. They declared war on Earth. The message was simple, clear, and full of arrogance. Humanity has broken the ancient laws of the galaxy. Prepare for the consequences. The message stunned the galaxy. For thousands of years, no one had dared to break the peace. No one had even come close. Yet here were the Zorthar, accusing humanity of crimes no one could understand. There was no explanation, no evidence, just a statement and a declaration of war. Across the galaxy, every species listened closely. The Zorthar were not known for their kindness, but they were feared. No one had ever crossed them, not in all these centuries. And now, they were targeting Earth, the new and untested member of the galactic community. The news spread quickly across Earth. People on every corner of the planet were talking about the Zorthar. News anchors, politicians, and scientists all scrambled to make sense of the announcement. But what was most surprising wasn't the news itself. It was the reaction of the human leaders. Instead of fear, instead of panic or anger, humans laughed. It wasn't that they didn't take the threat seriously. It was that they saw something the Zorthar didn't. While the rest of the galaxy was trying to figure out how to respond to the Zorthar's declaration, humans were already preparing. They had spent years developing technologies, training their forces, and strengthening their alliances. While the Zorthar had been watching from afar, humanity had quietly grown stronger. In a global broadcast, Earth's leaders came together to address the people. "We have received the message from the Zorthar," the president said with a confident smile. "And to be honest, we find it rather amusing. They think we're afraid. We're humans. We don't scare easily." The president paused, and the crowd erupted in laughter. Across the world, humans began to feel a surge of pride. They weren't just Earthlings anymore. They were part of something greater, something stronger than anyone could imagine. The Zorthar thought they could intimidate humanity, but all they had done was spark a fire. Across social media, the response was similar. Memes and jokes about the Zorthar started flooding in. People mocked the Empire's arrogance, showing images of Earth's defenses with captions like, "Bring it on," and "We've got this." Even the scientists, who normally approached everything with caution, began to express their excitement. They had prepared for this moment, and now the challenge had come to them. The galaxy watched, confused and intrigued. No one could believe what was happening. The Zorthar had expected fear, panic, and submission. Instead, they had found defiance, confidence, and even humor. While some were skeptical, many were inspired by humanity's reaction. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Earth, once thought of as a primitive world on the edge of the galaxy, was now standing tall and unafraid. And in the hearts of humans, one thought echoed louder than anything else. Let them come. The galaxy was still reeling from the Zorthar's shocking declaration of war against Earth. Everyone, from the most powerful empires to the smallest remote colonies, had their eyes fixed on the humans. What would they do next? Would they crumble in fear, or would they rise to the challenge? The answer came quicker than anyone expected. In a series of global addresses, world leaders, military commanders, and scientists made it clear: humanity wasn't scared. They weren't worried. If anything, they were ready. Humans had always been resourceful. Their creativity and problem-solving skills were what set them apart from the rest of the galaxy, and now they were about to put those skills to the test in a way no one had imagined. "We've been preparing for something like this for years," said General Tessa Collins, the head of Earth's planetary defense forces, during one of the first broadcasts. "The Zorthar underestimated us. They made the mistake of thinking we're just a bunch of children playing in the galactic sandbox. But we're not. We're humans, and we have one thing that no one else has: imagination. We'll turn that into our weapon." The president's speech, broadcast live across Earth, echoed the same sentiment. The Zorthar may be powerful, but they're not invincible. They've made a grave mistake. They've underestimated humanity's spirit, and now they'll see what we're made of. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't going to bow down. Instead, they were going to show the galaxy just how far they'd come. It wasn't about power alone. It was about innovation, determination, and a refusal to be intimidated. And the rest of the galaxy was about to witness it firsthand. Meanwhile, the Zorthar were growing more frustrated. Their fleet, massive and intimidating, sat on the edge of Earth's solar system, waiting for the green light to begin their assault. Yet they couldn't understand why humanity wasn't reacting the way they expected. The messages sent by Earth's leaders weren't filled with fear or anxiety. They weren't begging for mercy. Instead, they were confident, almost mocking the Zorthar, as if the Empire's threat didn't matter at all. The Zorthar's War Council, made up of their greatest minds, convened to discuss the situation. They couldn't fathom why humanity was so calm. "Do they not realize the power we possess?" Emperor Valthor asked, his voice cold and demanding. "Perhaps they are foolishly brave, Your Excellency," suggested one of his advisors, an old Zorthar general named Sharek. "Or perhaps they've prepared in ways we have not foreseen." The thought unsettled the council. Could it be true? Had humanity actually planned for this moment? Back on Earth, the preparations were well underway. While the rest of the galaxy debated the outcome of the impending war, humanity worked in unison to prepare for what was to come. The military focused on developing weapons that could counter the Zorthar's advanced technology. Scientists in laboratories across the planet developed new energy shields, antimatter weapons, and defense systems that could turn the tide of battle. But humans weren't relying solely on technology. They were working on something else: their greatest strength, adaptability. Unlike the Zorthar, who relied on their power and age-old strategies, humanity had the ability to change and grow in response to new challenges. That was the key. The Zorthar might have superior ships and weapons, but humans had the capacity to think differently, to come up with unexpected solutions. This was humanity's secret weapon. Across Earth, ordinary people were preparing too. Engineers, artists, teachers, and farmers. Everyone had a role to play. People weren't just sitting back and waiting for orders. They were actively contributing. Young students were designing drones and robots. Older engineers were upgrading Earth's space stations, and even the artistic community created morale-boosting messages and symbols to unite humanity in their shared cause. Even in the face of a threat as large as the Zorthar, humanity's creativity shone through. In cities around the world, there were posters of Earth's future victory, memes about beating the invaders, and video games designed to simulate battles between humans and aliens, all encouraging the spirit of resistance and unity. It was clear now, the humans had no intention of going quietly into the night. They were going to fight, and they were going to win. The Zorthar, who had thought humanity was nothing more than a speck in the universe, had underestimated their enemy. They had made the mistake of assuming that Earth was weak. The humans had never been weak, and now the whole galaxy was going to find out just how strong they really were. Meanwhile, as humanity prepared for battle, their allies from across the galaxy started to take notice. Species that had been oppressed by the Zorthar for centuries, who had long been too afraid to challenge their rulers, began to reach out. Some sent messages of support, while others offered to lend their ships and soldiers. Humanity's courage was contagious, and slowly, a coalition of like-minded species started to form, each one hoping to stand with Earth in this battle. The Zorthar Empire had thought they would strike fear into the heart of humanity. Instead, they had sparked a fire, one that was growing stronger with every passing day. And as the humans stood united, ready to face whatever the Zorthar threw at them, they shared one simple message with the galaxy: we are not afraid. The tension in space was palpable as the Zorthar fleet hovered just outside Earth's atmosphere. Their massive warships, towering and ominous, stood like silent giants, waiting for the command to strike. The fleet was ready for war. Emperor Valthar had made it clear there would be no mercy. Earth would fall, and the galaxy would remember who ruled the stars. But as the Zorthar waited, they could not have predicted the strange calm that had settled over Earth. The humans weren't running in fear. They weren't cowering in their cities, hiding from the threat. They were preparing, yes, but more than that, they were smiling. It confused the Zorthar. How could these humans, who they thought were nothing more than an insignificant species, be so bold in the face of such overwhelming power? The Emperor had ordered the attack, but now doubts were starting to creep in. Were the humans really as weak as they had believed? The first strike came not from the Zorthar, but from Earth. A sleek, silver spacecraft, unlike anything the Zorthar had ever seen, shot out of Earth's orbit. The ship, a prototype developed by Earth's engineers, was fast, nimble, and designed for one purpose: to send a message. General Collins watched as the ship sped toward the Zorthar fleet. She knew that the humans had no hope of defeating the Zorthar's vast armada on their own, at least not yet. But this first strike wasn't meant to win the war. It was meant to show the Zorthar that Earth wouldn't go down without a fight. The ship, named Vanguard, was small but powerful. It was equipped with Earth's newest weapons, energy pulses that could briefly disable a ship's systems. It wasn't designed to destroy the Zorthar's warships, but it was built to cause enough damage to make them rethink their strategy. As the Vanguard closed in on the Zorthar fleet, the Zorthar commanders watched in confusion. What was this tiny vessel doing? Why was it approaching them so boldly? It was clearly outmatched. Their ships were far bigger, far stronger. The Vanguard fired its first shot, a burst of concentrated energy that slammed into the shields of one of the smaller Zorthar warships. The ship staggered, its systems flickering. The Zorthar had expected the ship to be nothing more than a target, but instead they found themselves facing an unexpected challenge. The Vanguard continued its attack, darting in and out of the larger ship's range, striking quickly before retreating. It was the perfect distraction. The Zorthar fleet was momentarily thrown into disarray. They hadn't expected such a fight from the humans. Meanwhile, on Earth, people watched the battle unfold on their screens. The broadcast wasn't just a military update. It was a symbol. The Vanguard was humanity's answer to the Zorthar's declaration of war. It was proof that humans would not just sit back and be destroyed. They were willing to fight. But the battle wasn't over yet. The Zorthar responded swiftly. Their ships regrouped, and soon, a wave of powerful fire began to rain down on the vanguard. The small ship was no match for the full force of the Zorthar's fleet. It was only a matter of time before it would be destroyed. Inside the vanguard, Captain Naomi Carter, a skilled pilot with years of experience, was pushing the ship to its limits. She knew the ship wouldn't survive much longer. But that wasn't her goal. She was buying time. She was buying time for humanity's real plan to come to fruition. "We can't hold them off much longer, Captain," her communications officer said, his voice tight with anxiety. "We need to pull back." Carter's grip tightened on the controls. "Not yet. We've done our job. Now it's time for the next phase." With a final, powerful burst of energy, the Vanguard fired one last shot. The weapon wasn't aimed at a ship. It was aimed at the Zorthar's command center. The blast struck with precision, temporarily disabling the Zorthar's communication systems across the fleet. The Zorthar were stunned. Their coordinated attack faltered. They had just lost their primary means of communication. For a few moments, they were blind. They couldn't command their fleet. They couldn't coordinate their next move. That was when the real power of humanity's plan came into play. Earth's defense systems, powered by the new energy shields and antimatter weapons, activated. Suddenly, Earth's satellites, hidden weapons platforms, and defense ships sprang to life. The skies above Earth were filled with glimmering shields and defensive fire as humanity's real weapons took the stage. The Zorthar fleet was forced to retreat, their advance stalled. They hadn't expected this level of preparation. They had underestimated humanity's ability to fight back. For the first time in a long while, the Zorthar Empire was uncertain. And on Earth, the people watched in awe. They had sent a message to the galaxy. Humans would never be pushed around again. No matter the size of the threat, humanity would stand firm. The war was just beginning, but humanity had already proven one thing. They were not to be underestimated. The Zorthar fleet was in disarray. The Vanguard's bold attack had stunned them, but it wasn't just the strike that had shaken their confidence. It was the fact that humanity had fought back in such a clever and unexpected way. They had thought the humans were weak. Now, they knew better. As the Zorthar fleet regrouped, they realized they were facing a much bigger problem than they had anticipated. The humans had more than just weapons. They had strategy. The shields protecting Earth were stronger than they had expected, and Earth's space stations were no longer just quiet research outposts. They were military strongholds, well prepared and armed to the teeth. Emperor Valthar sat in his command room, staring at the holographic display of the battlefield. He had expected the humans to surrender, to fall in line like all the other species they had conquered. Instead, they were proving to be far more difficult to control. "What is their plan?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. His advisors, normally quick with answers, were silent. They were struggling to make sense of the situation. The Zorthar had sent their finest ships, their strongest warriors. They had done everything by the book, and yet the humans were holding their ground. "They'd done something we did not foresee, Emperor," said Jarek, the older general. "They've used their greatest strength against us, their ability to adapt. They've turned their resources into weapons, and their people are united in a way we haven't seen before." The Zorthar were a species built on power and control. They expected to dominate through sheer force. But the humans had proven that their real strength lay in something far more unpredictable: ingenuity and unity. On Earth, the mood was shifting. The earlier feeling of defiance had grown into something more powerful: hope. As the news of the Vanguard's success spread, people across the globe felt a surge of confidence. It was no longer just the military preparing for battle. Every person, from farmers to scientists, was now contributing in their own way. Dr. Elena Morales, one of Earth's top scientists, had been working tirelessly with her team to develop new technologies that could turn the tide of the war. They had already improved the energy shields, but now they were focusing on something even more powerful: the creation of a new type of energy weapon that could potentially destroy entire fleets in one shot. Dr. Morales and her team worked day and night, knowing the pressure they were under. But they weren't just working for themselves. They were working for every single human who had ever believed in the possibility of victory. They were working for Earth. In the war room, General Collins watched the updates coming in from all over the world. Earth's defenses were holding strong, but that wasn't enough. They needed to take the fight to the Zorthar. The time for defense was over. "We have to strike back," Collins said, her voice steady and determined. "We've held them off for now, but if we're going to win this war, we need to hit them where it hurts." The military leaders agreed. They needed a plan, and they needed it fast. They began formulating a strategy to attack the Zorthar fleet directly. It wouldn't be easy. Humanity didn't have the overwhelming firepower that the Zorthar possessed. But they had something the Zorthar lacked: creativity. The plan they came up with was bold and risky, but it had one major advantage. It played to humanity's strengths. The Zorthar expected a direct confrontation. They expected a clash of forces, but humanity's plan was anything but straightforward. As the military leaders debated the final details, Earth's scientists made another breakthrough. Dr. Morales and her team had successfully developed the prototype for the new energy weapon. It wasn't ready for full-scale use, but it was enough to make an impact. The weapon could cut through even the toughest of shields, and if it was aimed at the right target, it could cause catastrophic damage. The decision was made. Earth would launch a surprise attack on the Zorthar's flagship, the Dread Sovereign. The Dread Sovereign was the heart of the Zorthar fleet, and if it was destroyed, it would throw their entire operation into chaos. The military knew it would be a difficult mission. The Zorthar flagship was heavily protected, surrounded by hundreds of smaller ships. But the humans had a secret weapon: stealth. They would send in a small, specially trained team of soldiers, using new cloaking technology developed by Earth's scientists. The soldiers would infiltrate the flagship and plant the new energy weapon at the heart of the ship. It was a dangerous mission, but the humans had nothing to lose. The Zorthar might have the numbers, but humanity had the courage to try the impossible. As Earth prepared for the mission, the whole planet seemed to hold its breath. The people who had once been fearful now felt a renewed sense of hope. The message was clear. Humanity was not just surviving the invasion. They were fighting back, and they were winning. The time had come for the humans to take the fight to the Zorthar. The first battle had shown that they weren't afraid. The second would prove that they were unstoppable. The day of the assault had arrived. Earth's forces were ready, their nerves steady despite the immense pressure of what was to come. The mission was risky, far riskier than anything humanity had attempted in centuries, but it was humanity's best chance to strike a real blow against the Zorthar. It was the moment they had all been waiting for, and they couldn't afford to waste it. General Collins stood at the front of the war room, watching the final preparations unfold on the massive screen. Every human force, from soldiers to scientists, had a role to play in the mission. The goal was clear: infiltrate the Dread Sovereign, the heart of the Zorthar fleet, and plant Earth's new energy weapon deep within its core. It was an ambitious plan, and no one had ever attempted anything like it. The Dread Sovereign was surrounded by hundreds of Zorthar ships, all waiting to destroy anything that approached. But Earth's forces had a secret weapon of their own: stealth technology. The Zorthar had no idea what was coming. The small team of soldiers selected for the mission was composed of Earth's finest. They had been trained for this moment, their skills honed to perfection. Captain Naomi Carter, the hero of the Vanguard mission, was leading the team. She knew the risks, and yet she felt a sense of calm. This was their chance to show the galaxy that humans were not a species to be underestimated. "Ready, Captain," a voice called over the comms. "All systems are green. We're good to go." Carter nodded, her eyes focused on the screen. "This is it. Let's do this for Earth. The team moved quickly, using the new cloaking technology to avoid detection. They boarded a small stealth ship, capable of slipping past the Zorthar's radar undetected. The ship was small enough to dodge enemy fire, but powerful enough to get them close to their target. Their mission was simple: get in, plant the weapon, and get out. But even with their best technology, the odds were slim. Every move had to be perfect. As the stealth ship approached the Dread Sovereign, the team's hearts raced. The Zorthar flagship loomed ahead, massive and imposing. Its dark hull reflected the stars like a jagged blade. Hundreds of enemy ships surrounded it, patrolling the area and keeping watch for any intruders. It would take a miracle for the humans to get past them unnoticed. Captain Carter's voice cut through the silence. "Keep it steady. We're almost there." Her team was silent, their eyes fixed on the screens in front of them. Their cloaking systems were working perfectly, at least so far. They were invisible to the Zorthar's sensors, but they still had to navigate through the fleet without drawing attention. A single mistake could cost them everything. The small ship glided between the enemy vessels, moving slowly and carefully. Every few seconds, the crew held their breath, waiting for the slightest change in the Zorthar's patrol patterns. The stealth ship was so close now, the Dread Sovereign just ahead, its defenses massive and terrifying. "We're almost in," Carter whispered, her fingers gripping the controls tightly. Then, something unexpected happened. A Zorthar warship suddenly altered its course and headed straight toward them. It was a simple mistake, one that could have been easily avoided if the Zorthar had been more careful. But now it was too late. "Brace for impact," Carter shouted, pulling the ship into a sharp turn. The ship's cloaking system flickered for a moment, a small glitch caused by the sudden maneuver. The Zorthar ship was close, too close. For a heartbeat, everything seemed to stop. Then the Zorthar ship passed by, just missing them. The crew let out a collective breath. They had dodged the danger, but the close call had rattled everyone. "We're clear," said Sergeant Mason, the team's weapons expert, his voice tight with tension. "For now." Captain Carter didn't waste any time. "We've got no more chances. Let's move." They pushed forward, the Dread Sovereign now within their grasp. The stealth ship crept into the flagship's hangar bay, where the team would disembark. The hangar was silent, dark, empty, except for the Zorthar guards stationed around the perimeter. With swift precision, the soldiers unloaded from the ship, moving silently into the shadows. They couldn't afford to be seen. The energy weapon was their only hope for success, and they couldn't risk it being destroyed before it reached its target. "Team, stay sharp," Carter ordered. "We're almost there." As they navigated the dark halls of the Dread Sovereign, every footstep felt like it was echoing in their minds. They moved quickly, knowing that the longer they stayed inside, the higher the chances were of being discovered. But every turn brought them closer to the heart of the ship, the control center where they could plant the weapon. Finally, they reached the heart of the flagship. The room was guarded by a handful of Zorthar officers. But Earth's soldiers were prepared. In a flash, they incapacitated the guards without a sound, moving quickly to the central control panel. Sergeant Mason quickly set the energy weapon in place. The countdown had begun. 5 minutes to detonation, Carter said. "We need to get out now." The team moved fast, retracing their steps back to the hangar. Every moment felt like an eternity. The tension was unbearable. The Dread Sovereign was about to explode, and they were still inside. The countdown was ticking. Every second felt like an eternity. The Dread Sovereign's control center was now a place of chaos, with Earth's soldiers rushing to escape before the energy weapon could do its job. Captain Naomi Carter led the way as her team sprinted through the dark corridors of the flagship. Their hearts pounded in their chests. They knew they had only minutes before the energy weapon detonated, and they couldn't afford to be caught. "Move! Move! Move!" Carter shouted, her voice firm despite the pressure. The team raced through the ship, retracing the route they had taken to infiltrate the flagship. But this time, it wasn't quiet. This time, they weren't sneaking past the Zorthar guards. They were racing against time. "We're almost there," Carter said, glancing at her wrist console. The countdown was now at 3 minutes. "Just hang on a little longer." They rounded a corner, and that's when they heard it. The unmistakable sound of footsteps. Zorthar soldiers were closing in on their position, no doubt alerted by the disturbance the team had caused earlier. The danger was growing by the second. "Get to the hangar bay now," Sergeant Mason yelled. He knew their only chance of survival was making it to the stealth ship before the Zorthar caught up with them. The team pushed forward, but the Zorthar soldiers were closing in faster than they had anticipated. In a split second, they found themselves surrounded. The hallway ahead was blocked by 2 Zorthar warriors, and the rear was no better. The soldiers had no choice but to fight. Carter pulled her sidearm from its holster, her eyes scanning the situation. "We don't have time for this," she muttered. "Mason, take point." Sergeant Mason nodded and dashed forward, firing a few quick shots to push the enemy back. His training kicked in as he moved with speed and precision, his weapon leaving no room for mistakes. The team followed closely behind him, using every tactic they had learned in their training to hold off the Zorthar. A burst of fire lit up the hallway as the soldiers engaged the Zorthar. The noise was deafening, the air thick with tension. But Carter knew they couldn't stop here. They couldn't get caught, not now. The energy weapon was too important, and they had to finish the mission. "Mason, lead us out," Carter shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. The Zorthar were relentless, but the humans were fast. Mason led the way, with Carter and the others close behind. The enemy was strong, but the humans had something they didn't: determination. The team fought their way forward, inch by inch. The ship was a maze of corridors, and every turn seemed to bring them closer to danger. But they couldn't give up. They had come this far, and they weren't about to fail now. Finally, they reached the hangar bay. The stealth ship was still there, waiting for them. "Let's go," Carter ordered, and they rushed aboard the ship. The engines hummed to life as the crew scrambled to get into their seats. The Zorthar were still coming, and they had no time to waste. "Captain, the countdown is at 1 minute," Mason said, his voice tense. "We need to leave now." Carter nodded, gripping the controls of the ship. "Hold on tight." The small stealth ship powered up and shot out of the hangar, speeding into the darkness of space. Behind them, the dread Sovereign was beginning to shake as the energy weapon began its countdown to detonation. It was only a matter of seconds before the ship would be destroyed, taking a good portion of the Zorthar fleet with it. But the humans weren't out of danger yet. The Zorthar had already sent reinforcements, and they were coming fast. "Enemy ships incoming," one of the crew members called out, his voice laced with urgency. "They're closing in on us." The small ship was fast, but it wasn't built for direct combat. It was designed for stealth, not speed or firepower. The team would have to rely on their skills to escape the incoming fleet. "Get us to the asteroid field," Carter ordered. "We can lose them there." The crew obeyed quickly, navigating the ship toward the dense cluster of asteroids nearby. The Zorthar ships would be forced to slow down to avoid crashing into the rocks, but the humans would have to be careful. The asteroid field was just as dangerous for them as it was for the enemy. The ship darted between the asteroids, the Zorthar ships following closely behind. They were fast, but the humans knew the field like the back of their hands. They used the terrain to their advantage, weaving through the rocks and avoiding direct fire. The Zorthar fleet struggled to keep up, their ships too large to navigate the tight spaces. For a brief moment, it seemed like they might escape. But then, one of the Zorthar ships came too close. The ship fired, hitting the stealth vessel with a blast that sent a shockwave through the hull. The ship shook violently, alarms blaring in the cockpit. "We've been hit," one of the crew members shouted, his voice full of panic. "The engines are damaged." "Stay calm," Carter snapped. "We're not done yet." With a quick, sharp turn, Carter guided the ship through an even narrower path between two massive asteroids. The Zorthar ships were forced to slow down, unable to follow through the tiny gap. The human ship shot out of the asteroid field and into open space. Behind them, the Zorthar fleet was still in pursuit, but the humans had a head start. The dread Sovereign's destruction had thrown the Zorthar into disarray. "We're clear," Mason said, his voice relieved but still tense. Carter exhaled. "Not yet. We're not out of this yet." But the first part of the mission was complete. The dread Sovereign was destroyed. The Zorthar fleet had been thrown into chaos. Humanity had taken its first real step toward victory. As the small ship sped through space, the crew remained on high alert. The dread Sovereign was gone, but the war with the Zorthar was far from over. Humanity had struck a major blow, but the enemy was relentless. The Zorthar fleet was still pursuing them, furious at the loss of their flagship. Captain Naomi Carter sat at the controls, her eyes scanning the space ahead. They were out of immediate danger, but she knew it wouldn't last. The Zorthar would come after them, and they had to make it to Earth before the enemy could regroup. "How long until we reach Earth?" she asked, her voice steady despite the exhaustion creeping into her bones. "We're about 6 hours away," replied Lieutenant Kim, the ship's navigator. "But we can't relax yet. The Zorthar are still in pursuit. We'll need to stay ahead of them." Carter nodded. "Do whatever it takes to keep us out of their reach. We can't let them catch up." As they made their way closer to Earth, the crew worked tirelessly to repair the damage the ship had taken during the escape. The hit they had taken in the asteroid field had caused significant damage to the engines, but the crew was skilled and determined. They couldn't afford to slow down. The ship's weapons officer, Sergeant Mason, stood at his post, his eyes fixed on the radar. "Zorthar ships are still following us. They're closing in." Carter glanced at the radar. It was a constant reminder that danger was never far behind. The Zorthar fleet was relentless, and they were closing in on Earth. The small ship was fast, but not fast enough to outrun a full fleet for long. "We need to buy some time," Carter said, her mind racing. "Can we set up a decoy? Something to throw them off?" Mason thought for a moment. "We have the tech for it. I can deploy a series of false signals. It'll make it look like there are multiple ships instead of just us." "Do it," Carter ordered. Mason quickly worked his way through the ship's systems. Activating the decoy, the ship sent out several false signals, making it appear as though a fleet of human ships was ahead of them. The Zorthar fleet would be forced to investigate, buying the crew a little more time. It worked. The Zorthar ships hesitated, breaking formation to chase the false signals. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it gave the humans a precious few moments of safety. "This should give us some breathing room," Mason said, his voice calm but focused. "But we still need to move quickly." The crew pressed on, racing toward Earth. But even as they neared the planet, the reality of their situation weighed heavily on them. The Zorthar had been humiliated, and they wouldn't rest until they had exacted their revenge. "We'll make it," Carter said, her voice determined. "We have to." As they entered Earth's atmosphere, the ship's systems began to glow red with the strain of re-entry. The damage they had sustained in the battle had made the journey more difficult. The ship was barely holding together, but the crew's determination kept them going. "We're almost there," Lieutenant Kim called out, her voice a mix of relief and anxiety. The ship descended rapidly, its engines straining to slow them down. The ground rushed up to meet them, and the tension in the air was almost unbearable. Every crew member was on edge, knowing that the fate of Earth, and perhaps the entire galaxy, rested on their shoulders. As the ship neared the landing site, they were met by Earth's defense forces. A fleet of ships was waiting for them, ready to protect Earth from any threat. But there was no time to waste. The mission was far from over. Carter activated the communication system, broadcasting a message to Earth's leaders. "This is Captain Naomi Carter, reporting in. The dread sovereign is destroyed. We have the weapon. The Zorthar fleet is in disarray, but there's still a threat. Earth is not safe yet. There was a brief pause on the line. Then, the voice of General Collins crackled through the comms. Captain, we've been monitoring the situation. Your success has already sent shockwaves through the galaxy. We're prepared to defend Earth with everything we have. We'll make sure the Zorthar never threaten us again. Carter felt a sense of relief wash over her. The fight wasn't over, but humanity had shown the galaxy that they were a force to be reckoned with. They had struck the first blow, and they would continue to fight, no matter the cost. As the ship touched down, the crew disembarked. Their mission had been a success, but the war was far from over. The Zorthar had been defeated once, but there was no telling how long it would take to end the war for good. Captain Carter stood tall, her heart filled with a sense of pride and determination. She knew that Earth's future depended on their ability to fight, to never give up, no matter how hard the battle became. "We'll be ready," she whispered to herself, watching as the Earth Defense Fleet prepared for what was to come. "We won't back down."